of the human eye. Your leaders have withheld the truth. You are not alone in this universe. We have lived among you, hidden, but no more. If you resist us, we will destroy the world as you know it.
Your world must not share the same fate as Cybertron. Whole generations lost.
Megatron must be stopped, no matter the cost.
Transformers! More than meets the eye. Autobots waging battle to destroy the evil forces of the Decepticons! Yeah!
Welcome to Now Playing Podcast's Transformers Retrospective Series.
I would have waited an eternity for this.
Hosted by our movie reviewers in disguise, Stuart, Justin, and Arnie.
One shall stand, one shall fall.
Come back to NowPlayingPodcast.com each week as they roll out a new Transformers movie review and see if they are more than meets the eye.
What you're about to see is top secret. Do not tell my mother.
But be warned, these reviews will contain spoilers and mild language. Listener discretion is advised.
This isn't my war.
Not yet, but I fear it soon will be.
Today we're discussing Transformers 1, starring Chris Hemsworth, Brian Tyree Henry, Scarlett Johansson, Keegan-Michael Key, Steve Buscemi, with Lawrence Fishburne and Jon Hamm, directed by Josh Cooley. This is the Now Playing co-host who has both the touch and the power, Arnie.
And this is your badassatron host, Stuart. No, I'm not doing a Transformers voice. I just literally have a cold right now.
It is kind of badass. This is JJ-tron, Justin.
I thought you'd be J126 or something. Everybody's like a letter and a few numbers with a couple of exceptions.
Right?
So welcome back, listeners, to our Transformers retrospective series. It has been a hot minute since we've discussed a Transformers film.
A little over 365 days. Rise of the Beast is a distant memory in my head.
Oh my god, I completely forgot Rise of the Beast was just last year. That feels 5 years ago.
Agreed.
But this one, I honestly, Stuart put it on the schedule and I thought I was being punked because you're right, Rise of the Beasts was coming and you were telling me that the very next year there was another Transformers movie, and not just any Transformers movie, but a cartoon coming, and I was like, my memories of seeing Transformer cartoons in theaters are not positive ones, whether it be in 1986 or when we revisited it for our retrospective series. So I was kind of dreading looking for a kidified Transformers cartoon. I mean, I cover a lot of Hasbro toys for the toy podcast. I knew they had a lot of kiddie Transformer entertainment out there. I was afraid we were basically looking at like Super Pets, the Transformers version.
Yeah, remember the Hub Network? Hasbro's little...
Yep.
Yeah, see, that's what I kind of... When I saw this, I was like, oh, are we just getting something that was supposed to go on Hub before they canned that streaming service?
Yeah, because there was that Rescue Bots TV show for a while, and that was really kiddie. Then there was Transformers Prime, which was on that Hub network, so...
Yeah, I mean, not knowing much about it going in, that's just kind of the vibe I was getting was, hey, this feels like something that they didn't get out in time before the streaming service went in the tin backs.
But this is kind of interesting because there have been so many Transformers television shows, animated, CG animated, just doing some research. I think there's close to 30 different Transformers television shows going from 1984 to now. And I was afraid there'd be a lot of research for Transformers 1. Did I have to watch everything from Transformers Prime to the Transformers Bumblebee spin-off show to get a lot of background for this? But no, we're going to the beginning. We're going to have an origin story and basically start an entire new continuity for Transformers with this animated film, Transformers 1.
Is Michael Bay involved? If not, it's already on better footing.
He's a producer.
No, he's not directing it. He's not writing it. He's not suggesting the humor, I don't think. It's not going to be Bayformers.
No, the director is Josh Cooley. We've discussed him before. He was the director of Toy Story 4, perhaps not as prestigious as being the director of Toy Story 1, 2, or 3, but still a pretty nice credit there, and the screenwriter for Inside Out. Plus, he's worked on a lot of other Pixar stuff. If you look at his credits, it's basically all Pixar until we get to Transformers 1. Not a Pixar project, an ILM animated project. I heard this statistic in one of the interviews with Cooley. This is ILM's first animated movie since Rango. If you remember Rango back in 2011.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Wow.
A lizard of some kind in the West.
Kind of doing a Johnny Depp, what was it? The Fear and Loathing type of vibe for kids.
Vague memories. Didn't see it. Don't see a lot of animated films. I will say this in support of this movie. I have been surprised at how well the format has worked for Spider-Man and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So if that's what they're going to try to do for Transformers, those bots could use all the help in the world. I really haven't enjoyed a single Transformers movie, so this feels like a better direction than making another one live action.
You didn't even enjoy Bumblebee, huh? That's my memory looking back, is that Bumblebee was the good one.
I gave a pass to Rise of the Beast, but I don't think I meant it. I take it back.
But no, yeah, I'm with you, Stuart. If going into this, I thought it had anything to do with Michael Bay, other than I think him just getting a nice little paycheck as a producer credit on this, I would have wanted to stay home extra hard.
Speaking of staying home, I went to the IMAX on Thursday, and there was, maybe 3 other people there? I know it's September, we're beyond the summer movie season, but it feels like nobody was at the movieplex at all.
This is expected to open between 30 and 40 million. It'll be number 1 at the box office if those numbers hold, against a $75 million budget plus toy sales. So it doesn't have to work too hard to break even, plus international money is going to be good. I think Transformers and cartoons do well overseas. So it doesn't have to make a ton, though. This isn't a $200 million animated film like some of them are. This one was done pretty cheap and pretty quickly. I went on Thursday night also, and when I bought my ticket 10 minutes before showtime on the Super Screen DLX showing, it said I was going to have a private showing. And I'm like, cool. That means I can take my notes on my phone. I don't do that if there's a single other soul anywhere in the theater. But if it's just me, I'll take my notes on my phone so I don't have to retype them from my notepad into a computer later. And then during the trailers, in come 2 other people. Now they sit well in front of me, but that's still enough. I'm not going to use my phone during the screening. So it was 3 of us on a Thursday night for the new movie opening that week.
Yeah, 30 million, they'd be lucky to get that.
Yeah, so we all had the same experience. I, too, went on Thursday night and took my son with me, and it was us and maybe 4 other people.
So what's the problem? That it's animated, that it's Transformers, that it's September?
I'd say all of the above. I mean, I do think that this movie isn't one people feel the need to race out and see on a Thursday night. I think if we were to see this on a Saturday matinee, we might have a much different crowd than on a Thursday night. This movie is PG, not even PG-13, so it seems like one people could take their kids to. Now, Justin, when you say you take your son, he's not a wee one. He's in his 20s.
Yeah, for sure. We did have a wee one in the audience with us, so that was nice. There was, an 8 or 9-year-old sitting a few rows behind us, so we had to mind our P's and Q's. But yeah, to me, getting into this movie, I felt like, wow, this would have been so much better at the beginning of summer. Something you could do when the kids are out of school, rather than trying to drop this right at the beginning of school.
It was a busy summer, though. I kind of understand the thought behind it. I believe, August and September is when we do see a lot of the, honestly, cheaper animated films coming out, I think.
Yeah, just next weekend, something called The Wild Robot is coming out. So it's a time that if you have a robot animated film, you want to put it out in September, I guess.
I noticed my audience was basically my age, so...
Yes.
I kind of felt like what brought them there was being fans of G1 Transformers and wanting to just see Transformers. It wasn't like this was something new to them.
Right. And I think that's an interesting point to make because this is Transformers 1, a starting point. This is a smart thing to do, frankly. All of that convoluted backstory, don't worry about what you did or didn't understand about all Sparks and all of that nonsense. You can just start here and they're telling me I don't even need to know that Optimus Prime and Megatron were enemies.
Yeah. And, going into this, I was completely unaware of what was happening other than the fact that I knew that it looked like some G1 Transformers and possibly telling us where they came from. I wasn't even sure it was an origin story. But halfway through the movie, Tyler leaned over to me and he's like, oh, okay, so that, I get it. He thought what we were watching was some lineage of the Transformers we've known for years, far off in the future. Like these were descendants of Optimus Prime and Megatron.
Oh, weird.
And I was like, yeah, nope, it makes a little more sense this way.
No, I got it right from the first trailer I saw for this. I've been calling this Transformers First Class ever since that first trailer because I'm thinking, no, you don't have to know Optimus Prime and Megatron are enemies, but if you know that, it's going to make your watching so much richer, like when we watched Professor X and Magneto, played by Fassbender and James McAvoy 14 years ago. And in fact, it hit me that probably the target audience of this wasn't around. I think X-Men First Class was 2011, so if you're aiming this at the tween set, they may not have even seen X-Men First Class. So you could completely rip off X-Men First Class in an animated format, and it would be the first time showing that to a number of the audience members. But I did do a deep dive in research on this because I'm like, this is going to show us the origins of Optimus Prime and Megatron. And what is that origin? I never knew. It turned out that if I remembered every episode of that G1 cartoon, I'd remember an episode where the aerial bots traveled back in time thousands of years and met Orion Pax, who they didn't realize would eventually become Optimus Prime before he had the Matrix of Leadership. So the origins for this do go all the way back to that 80s TV series, and through the comics, through the video games, through the cartoons. This is an origin story that's been told a lot of times with a lot of different continuities. I did like some of the stuff I was reading about the background where Orion Pax, Optimus Prime, was basically a data clerk, and Megatron, who was known as Megatronus, the D16 is new for this movie, but Megatronus was a gladiator, and so they had different backgrounds when they did finally come together and become friends, and then had different ideas, as we'll discuss with this movie. But most of the backstories did have them both on Cybertron and both as friends before they became the bitter enemies. And that's what they're going to really delve into here. Again, I thought it was a good hook. I love X-Men First Class. It's one of my favorite superhero movies. And so I was actually excited to go see this.
I was ashamed. This is one where you sneak in the theater and pray you don't run into anyone you know.
I went in with good intentions, I'll say that. I went in as a blank slate, and the only thing that I really had on my boxes that need checking is answer some questions I've had in previous Transformers, just about their general lore, right? Like, what kills a Transformer? What makes a Transformer not just a bunch of metal and oil?
Oh, we're going to be talking about it. Much like previous Transformers films from Michael Bay, we're going to get Transformer ghosts. We're going to get Transformer deaths and resurrections and Jesus metaphors. It's all in here. There's a lot of lore. I don't know that you can make a whole lot out of it.
Well, let's try. Arnie, give them the plot.
Long ago on the planet Cybertron, robots Orion Pax, voiced by Chris Hemsworth, and D16, voiced by Brian Tyree Henry, worked as miners. Energon, once abundant on Cybertron, became scarce after the Quintesson invasion 50 cycles ago. That invasion led to the death of the Primes and the loss of the Matrix of Leadership. Now the Transformers' current leader, Sentinel Prime, voiced by Jon Hamm, searches for the Matrix. Cybertron is divided by a caste system where only the elite have transformation cogs. After Pax and D16 are demoted for racing in the Iacon 5000, they meet B127, voiced by Keegan-Michael Key, and uncover a map left by the legendary Alpha Trion, voiced by Lawrence Fishburne. This map could lead to the Matrix of Leadership. Alongside Elita 1, Scarlett Johansson, they find the location, discovering dead primes and they're able to revive Alpha Trion, who reveals Sentinel Prime's betrayal. Sentinel Prime serves the Quintessons and delivers Energon to them. Alpha Trion gives the group transformation cogs taken from the dead Primes, but Sentinel's forces, led by Arachnid, attack. Alpha Trion is killed, and Pax and D16 disagree on how to proceed. Pax wants to expose Sentinel Prime, while D16 seeks violent revenge. The group is captured by the High Guard, led by Starscream, voiced by Steve Buscemi, who refuses to help until D16 defeats him and takes command. Sentinel's forces capture D16 and B-127, while Pax rallies the miners to revolt. In the final battle, D16 kills Sentinel Prime and renames himself Megatron, but Pax is saved by the spirits of the Primes, being given the Matrix of Leadership and becoming Optimus Prime. Optimus defeats Megatron, banishes him, and distributes transformation cogs to all the workers, restoring Energon to Cybertron. Megatron forms the Decepticons, and Optimus becomes the planet's new leader as credits roll.
And as we get started, I think I knew coming into this, OP, Optimus Prime, this Orion Pax is going to be one of the few Transformers I could actually name. Much like me, he doesn't sound like I think of him sounding. He's got a new voice actor. Chris Hemsworth is stepping in for the guy that's always been Optimus Prime.
Right, Peter Cullen, who did Optimus Prime in the 80s series. I remember when the first Bayformers film was coming out, and there was an uprising that nobody could voice Optimus Prime except Peter Cullen. And so they actually did go back and get Peter Cullen to do that Optimus Prime voice. He is the voice of Optimus Prime, although there are some others who have done it. Alan Tudyk, a actor we discussed on our Serenity review and our recent Stephen King review.
But not in anything I've seen.
No, but there have been a few other voice actors who did it, but Peter Cullen is the main one. The creators said they wanted a different voice because this wouldn't be Optimus. This is him growing up to get that voice. So, I wouldn't think of Chris Hemsworth as a voice actor. I mean, I think of him, I think of his physique, I think of how he looks, I think of his screen presence. So he wouldn't be the one I would necessarily jump to as top in the line as the voice of young Optimus Prime. But I think he does actually really well here, and his voice is innocuous enough that I completely forget it's him.
All the voice actors have been corralled from the Marvel stable of talent, right? I mean, Scarlett Johansson's here, Brian Tyree Henry, like they've all done MCU films. I guess that's to justify adults seeing this movie. We can feel better.
Yeah, but we also got Keegan-Michael Key, Steve Buscemi, Jon Hamm. I do know that it's actually the Avengers connection that got ScarJo on the project. Hemsworth sent her a text after Hemsworth was on the project, like, hey, do you want to come and voice this robot?
Who would say no to that?
I do think that not having Peter Cullen here is maybe a potential sticking point for the fanboy crowd here, right? I mean, as Arnie said, this is kind of the first time in a major Transformers production that he's not being used. So I think you got to go out and get a name, right? Even if it's not going to be somebody who's going to sound like Optimus Prime the way we know, you put a name like Hemsworth up there and maybe we look the other way on it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I know that the tendency is to get Hollywood names to voice big roles in animated movies these days. I kind of miss the days where you just had really talented voice actors who could do like 5 or 6 different voices also as your lead, like Frank Cullen, who was a voiceover actor in a lot of stuff. But I mean, honestly, Scarlett Johansson, I'll go and see a movie because she's in it, because she's a great actress, but I haven't gone and watched Sing, and she does a voice in that. It's not like a name star being a voice of something is going to get me to tune in more. I mean, Michael Cera and Samuel L. Jackson had that Kung Fu movie a while back. I like both those actors, but I didn't watch that movie.
It is kind of a sticky situation, right? Because I'm in that same boat where it's like, I would prefer that we just get good voice actors to do these voice roles. But it also does kind of lend a little bit of credence to the quality of a animated movie if you do see some of the stars' names up there.
Yeah.
At least you know you're not dealing with direct-to-video type of stuff.
Yeah, it does. It says that there's more confidence in the project, that it isn't just made for TV and somehow wound up in your movie theater. And I will say, getting started here, it looks pretty good. The animation style, it's not wow amazing. I wouldn't say it's top shelf. It doesn't have the idiosyncratic style, the graffiti style of Spider-Verse. There's nothing unique about it, but I do think that it's almost as good looking as the beginning of the Bumblebee movie, which was sort of my benchmark. You know, that started showing how you could have a movie without any human beings in it and what it would look like. And that's what they're doing here. And I think I buy into it more or less as we watch this OP, Orion Pax, break into a records room.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes on in the beginning of this movie that when I was reviewing my notes, they're just trying to dribble out data dumps to us. I don't quite understand why Orion Pax it looks like he's doing a break-in. He's cutting open a grate, crawling through a vent. There's laser alarms that he's tiptoeing over, all just to get to a data tape. And I did love they have a Nintendo reference here. He puts the tape in, it doesn't work. He pulls it out, he blows on it and puts it back in. That's there for people of our generation. But he has to know what he's watching. I mean, it feels like he's watching something you'd see at a planetarium. It just is like, at the dawn of time, Primus sacrificed his life force, transforming into Cybertron. He birthed the first Transformers, the Primes. I mean, this is telling the audience information. This is the lore, Justin, you said you're looking for. Here's a huge data dump of lore, but I have no in-universe reason why Orion Pax would want to watch this National Geographic special on his own world.
The reason given is that the matrix of leadership has gone missing, and so that's the MacGuffin. And yes, I agree, this does not feel like a top secret file, and he's disappointed not to be learning new information. It sort of ends in a pat, and it just disappeared kind of way. And so it's building the mystery of what happened to this MacGuffin.
Well, yeah, and I do appreciate some of this data dump here, and especially the presentation of it. I would much rather watch data dumps like this, even if it is just kind of a cheap little hologram way, instead of listening to people tell us what happened. It helps everybody, including kids, get caught up with what we need to know. We get to see some of these characters before we meet them. But yeah, filling out my Transformers lore here, yeah, I learned that Transformers have office jobs back on Cybertron.
Yeah, it is kind of funny. And Stuart, you said you only knew Pax was Prime because of the initials. He looks like, honestly, a McDonald's Happy Meal version of what a Optimus Prime toy would be. He's small, he's narrow, he doesn't transform, but he's got the red shoulders, he's got the blue legs. It definitely looks like Optimus here. And he's pulling these youthful hijinks, I guess I'd call them, which is going to get us really quickly into our first action scene where he's running from security bots. And I understand that this movie, they really focused on 3D. I didn't get a chance to see it in 3D, but I bet some of this stuff, like when he's falling through the mini stories of Cybertronian buildings, would look good in 3D.
AMC screwed up. I paid for a 3D screening and they ran it. I was wearing the glasses and 5 minutes in, I take them off. I'm like, wait, there's no difference. They didn't put on the right show.
Arnie, you said McDonald's toy, which is a pretty good comparison. I was thinking GoBot's version of Optimus Prime the whole time, right? Like they don't transform quite right and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, so far I feel like there's enough action going on here and we're learning a little bit about these characters. And as he's running away, he's saved by what looks like GoBot's version of Megatron, but that's not his name. He's D16.
I could have told you what Optimus Prime looked like. I don't remember what Megatron looked like or what he turned into, and I'm still actually not sure.
To be honest with you, Stuart, because the movies that we've watched, Optimus Prime always is red and blue with a silver face. They've kept that throughout the movies. Megatron, even throughout the toy line, has been a gun, he's been a tank, he's looked different. In half the movies, I can't even remember what he looked like because he was just kind of a gray blob in a lot of the Bay movies.
Yeah, and when I think of Megatron, actually, I just came from Universal Studios where I did the Transformers ride, and they have a giant Megatron outside who will roast you. I've been addicted to TikToks of this giant Megatron, like, it's a guy in a costume, but it's like a 10-foot costume. He'll make fun of your clothes, he'll make fun of your kids, very light roasting going on out there. And so I know what the movie one looks looks like, but when I think of the Megatron, I'm thinking of what was drawn in the G1 cartoon. And yeah, I see it here. I see it in this D16, and he's just loading a cart, and we don't realize that Orion Pax was in this cart, and he was covering for him so the security guards can't find Pax.
What I see is Buzz and Woody. It should be said that the director we mentioned, Josh Cooley, his claim to fame, the reason why he got this gig, Toy Story 4, which is, let's face it, the worst Toy Story movie. That's the kind of playful banter. There's a lot of fist bumping. There's a lot of loving togetherness between these two bros. And I think that, again, it's an adjustment to realize that they're not going to, at least for the first half of the movie, play this up as some kind of tragedy in the making. This is to be thought of as lighthearted.
But all the origin stuff, it is just so obligatory that this is going to be where Megatron gets the Decepticon logo. It's a decal given to him by Pax. We don't know why Pax is looking for first edition stickers, but this is the logo of Megatronus Prime, the strongest Prime who ever lived, and so D16 is going to wear this sticker on his shoulder for most of the movie.
Yeah, I mean, I just took it as, these primes that they keep hearing about are the heroes of their world, so they're going to have collector's cards and they're going to have little memorabilia that you want to get your hands on as a fanboy. And I was fine with that. And I think that's a good way to kind of give us as the audience something to bite onto here, because right now, Optimus Prime and Megatron are not those characters. They're just nobodies.
True, but it would be a little bit weird. It would be like me meeting up with you, Justin, and being like, look, I got you this George Washington sticker. Put it on your shoulder.
Yeah, maybe. Did you notice, Stuart, you brought up, the Toy Story connection of the Woody and Buzz type of situation. I noticed it in the animation every once in a while. These robots run kind of like Buzz does in the movie. The same animated style of clunky guy running kind of comedically.
That's what I mean. Yeah, everything about this opening chase and then later the chase that they jump into, it feels like the kind of bumbling antics you would expect in that Pixar series. Again, I would expect that you would, Arnie, tease the idea that these are Cain and Abel, right? Brothers that have a falling out.
Well, that's what the movie is going to explore. I don't think they need to tease it this early. We do want to see them as allies. What I didn't see them as was co-workers in mining jobs, though. That's kind of a interesting thing. At the very end of the film, we're going to see a flashback to both of their first day on the job, where they're entering the mines and make friends with each other. And yeah, because of the Quintesson War, there is a lack of energon on Cybertron, and so they have this working class of non-transforming robots to dig energon out of the planet core, and that's what these guys do by day. And their boss is Alita, not the Battle Angel. I honestly was writing Alita with an A the entire time in my notes, but this is Alita with an E, and yes, voiced by ScarJo.
That's the voice that I didn't know going in. ScarJo was in this, and to be honest with you, it sounded familiar, but it didn't scream at me that this was Scarlett Johansson the whole time.
I think she has a really distinctive voice, but I knew coming in she was in the movie, so I recognized her as we were watching it. In fact, I didn't catch her character's name for a little bit, so I'm writing Scarlett Johansson in my notes to try to figure this out. I thought because she's kind of a purplish color, I'm like, is this RC? Is this the one that would eventually become the robot? But no, Alita is her own Autobot.
Interesting. Well, that's one thing I did notice. It seems like there's several different unique designs for what we would consider the male Transformers, but when it comes to the female ones, I feel like they all just are kind of the same look, just different colors. They all kind of look like Alita.
Yeah, RC is in here. There are so many Easter eggs and cameos in this movie. We're going to pretty quickly go from these two on the job. We're going to see that Orion Pax has leadership skills because there's an emergency in the mine and they have to go back and save Jazz, who was not named after music, but in fact had that name on Cybertron, I guess. He was Jazz before he was a car, and it's Pax who goes back to rescue him in this, despite Alita being like, hey, we all have to escape this explosion.
It's super clumsy, but the idea is he doesn't follow protocol. He's seen as someone that can't be a leader because he doesn't follow the rules. And it gets Alita fired, and he's feeling like a schmuck, but he's optimistic, and that's where the name comes from, right? He never gets down about the fact that he's always kind of screwing up.
Yeah, and we see here that he is going to, I guess, not be subdued by Darkwing, who is one of the... Is he security? Is he management? I'm not quite sure what Darkwing is, but he's a tough guy, and Pax is going to give him the middle finger. I'm shocked. I had to look to see if this was a G-rated film. You can't even show the middle finger. They just imply that Pax gives him the middle finger.
I mean, visually, I think they are telling a pretty easy story. Like you said, Arnie, I'm not sure who this security droid is, but you can tell by how sharp and angular he is. He's probably not somebody that is going to be one of our buddies on screen.
Yeah, and we're going to get some cartoonish comedy here. Like, D16 is going to punch Pax, and Darkwing's going to punch D16. It feels very Looney Tunes, honestly.
That's what I mean. Don't you feel at this point that you're in a movie you're way too old for?
Maybe, but I feel like they're also dropping stuff for us old guys too. Like, this is where they get the you got the touch, you got the power joke in there. You know, like, kids aren't going to get that.
Not unless they're big Boogie Nights fans.
Right? That's where I originally know the joke from, so. So I'm thinking Dirk Diggler at this point rather than original Transformers.
But you have to be 15 or under to miss the idea that Sentinel Prime is the big bad guy, right? When Jon Hamm blows into this movie as the person that like is making these condescending speeches about the little men and they're all fawning over him. And he can't seem to find that matrix of leadership, but distracting them all with a big old splashy race. I mean, we can all see what this is.
Yeah, I was getting a big Mystery Men vibe off of this. I can't remember what his character was, but remember the big hero and Mystery Men that they all looked up to?
Yes, absolutely. That is a great reference here. It was Greg Kinnear was the actor in Mystery Men.
Yes.
But the difference is in Mystery Men, Greg Kinnear was merely ineffectual, which is kind of what I thought about Sentinel Prime when we're introduced to him here. I thought maybe he was just stupid. I didn't remember Transformers Dark of the Moon, that Sentinel Prime was Leonard Nimoy's character, who was supposed to be a friend of Optimus, and then became a betrayer of Optimus, and all of that. And if I'd remembered that, I'd have instantly known Sentinel Prime was the bad guy, but at first I thought he was just a doofus, that he was an ineffectual leader, not that he was evil.
I think when Arachnid, or whatever her name is, comes in for the first time, I think that's where it's like, oh, okay, this is pretty obvious.
It's Arachnid. She flies, so Arachnid.
Arachnid.
Yeah, anyone that has a creepy spider sidekick, not a good guy.
Yeah, I mean, pretty soon I'm figuring it out. It's really at the Iacon 5000 race where I feel is the last of our time wasting. And this is a short movie at 104 minutes, so to waste as much time as they do in the beginning is a lot. But we're going to see Pax trick D16 into entering this race, and, you know, they can't transform into cars or planes, they can't race, but Pax got them jetpacks, and they have another flashy action scene. Every car in this race is a Easter egg. If you look into the Transformers lore, every name on that leaderboard is a toy that you could buy at one point in time. And I'm enjoying the graphics here, but I am starting to already feel the time being spent here when they're going through the chompers like they had in Galaxy Quest as part of this race. It feels very Mario Kart of a race.
Yeah, but I feel like the pacing is pretty good. Like, right about the time I'm starting to think, like, okay, this is taking a while, it's wrapping up. It's not like the pod race scene in Star Wars where I feel like, okay, 2 more laps to go? Seriously? Can we move on past this?
Pod race scene's one of my favorite parts of Phantom Menace. I mean, you wanted more Senate hearings. Okay, we'll get there soon enough.
Sure.
But it is a fun scene. It does show these two, more Orion Pax than D16, wanting to... I mean, Orion Pax says, time to show them we are more than meets the eye. That's not just a toy tagline. That's Orion Pax wanting to prove himself to all the other Transformers.
Which is kind of what's making me laugh here is like he's dragging this dead weight around who literally falls and causes them not to win. But like he doesn't need D16. He thinks he does for some reason. He's like, we got to do this together. We're just all for one. But I'm like, no, you're the one that wants to do this. This other guy doesn't care. Just go do your thing.
Orion Pax would have won first place in this race if D16 didn't hurt his leg from some debris, and Pax, again, showing he's selfless, goes back and like, I'll carry you, and then they lose like last place because of it.
Yeah, again, so this is really aimed real low. I would say 15 and under, and 15's generous.
Yeah, I think they're also like having to walk a kind of a tightrope here where the idea of not being enslaved and being a free spirit, but also not crapping on capitalism too much with an overt message. They need Optimus Prime to be, like you said, Stuart, the optimist here, but we also need a guy who's wanting to toe the company line, so he needs to be dragged along to do these type of things. So I mean, I see the dynamic here, and it's working on a few levels. It's not necessarily just at the younger crowd.
And what would work better for me, though, is if these two weren't starting from the same square. Like, they seem very much of a similar mindset when it comes to their job, when it comes to their fandom, but Orion Pax is more of a rule breaker, more of a glory hound, really. But what I don't see is a fundamental difference in these two characters that will eventually lead to the rift that's going to happen. Like you say, Stuart, D16 seems like unambitious dead weight, so it's not like these two are competitive with each other, where D16 is trying to one-up Pax or anything. He's not even really trying to support Pax, he's just kind of there.
No, they're not very good friends. In the end, they have lockers next to each other, and they fist bump a lot, and that's about it.
They're work buddies.
But this does get the attention of Sentinel Prime on those two because, hey, you made the miners mine harder because they were enthused about what a miner can do. And so we're going to make you figureheads, and you're going to go around and speak to the miners and get them to mine faster.
Do either of you guys watch the series The Boys?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, so I feel like they're bringing a little bit of that in here, where what we're seeing with Sentinel is that he's not just some great guy and he's out there doing stuff. You can tell that he's pulling PR, right? We're slowly starting to see behind the mask, and he's really shaping a narrative to keep these people doing what he wants them to do, but we're not sure why.
Yeah, I definitely think he reads as evil pretty early on, or at least, as Arnie says, ineffective. And again, we know this is a story of Optimus Prime. He's got to be the one to rise up and lead all of these machines that have no cog. And so it feels rudimentary.
It does, and it's in this scene where I think maybe The Boys was in the back of my mind, Justin, because it's here where I decide he's not just ineffectual, but he's like Homelander.
Yeah.
You know, he's going to put on the big smile for the cameras, but there's going to be something nefarious behind the scenes. And I realized pretty quickly that it would be Sentinel Prime who D16 and Orion Pax would need to rise up against.
He invites them to their crib, and then the next minute they're being dropped into sub-level 50.
Yeah, I think that's bad storytelling or miscommunication, because I really do believe Sentinel Prime wanted to use them as a way to motivate workers to work harder, because if you can get two guys to make your workers work 10% harder, that's far better than having two more guys in the mines, or especially in the garbage chute. But I think this all comes down to Darkwing again, who is pissed because he was in third place in the race, and these two crashed on him when they used a vent to catch up to the leaders, and they took him out of the race. And so I think it's Darkwing operating on his own that flushes them down to sub-level 50. They didn't even know there was a sub-level 50. But down there is Transformers mascot B127. I mean, you know this is Bumblebee, right? He's yellow. He kind of has the shape of the head that the old toy had. And unlike the Michael Bay movies where they've kept him mute since the very first film, here he's actually got a voice by Keegan-Michael Key, and he never shuts up.
Yeah, endlessly chatty to the point of being obnoxious. Obviously, if this series continues, it'll tell you who gets fed up enough to take away his voice and makes him speak in car stereo.
We've had a couple different stories of that, but hey, they like him in car stereo mode because they fixed his voice at the end of 1 only to break it again in part 2, so...
I mean, I feel like we kind of just talked about a character like this in Borderlands, right? Like Jack Black playing the Clank robot, and you can overdo it, but I feel like this introduction, we get the vibe of who he is, and yeah, walks right up to that line of being overly obnoxious, but not to the point where I'm ready to walk out of the theater over it. I like Key. I've always liked Key and Peele, and I think his sense of humor's coming through here, so it's keeping me attached to this character long enough to not want to yank his voice box out.
Well, I agree. I think Key is really good as the comic relief here. I also like Key. That doesn't mean I like everything Key is in. Looking at You, the Predator. But, and we discussed him, was it just last year that he was Toad in the Mario movie?
Yeah.
I think he brings a good energy here. I'm kind of laughing at his...
Badassatron.
Trying to do that Stuart has a cold voice and say that he's...
Badassatron.
But again, I'm entertained by him, but I can't overlook the clunky storytelling that, oh, hey, this little holodisc down here has been sitting with the garbage for so long, and it just happens to have the message and the map that's going to lead to the Matrix of Leadership. They just stumble upon it among Bumblebee's mannequin make-believe friends.
Well, let's show some respect. One of them is Tron, a very, very funny callback to Key and Peele.
Yeah, the teacher sketch, right?
Yeah, where he thinks all the white kids that are giving him his name are messing with him. And there's always a couple black kids in the class that okay, Balake, spelled Blake, but, so... It's a good callback to that. But yeah, convenient, right? The one thing that they want to go find is just on a map right here.
On the robot named Steve. As you mentioned, everything has weird names, but the one that has the holodisc, Steve.
Look, this thing is not going to be pieced together like a well-oiled machine. It is pretty crude, is rudimentary. It's, again, made for kids. It's going to live or die by how much you have goodwill towards these characters and how much these characters have fun together. This is the Wizard of Oz. They're off down this yellow brick road now. They have a hologram that tells them they need to find this planet where the thing is. Pick your MacGuffin. And so, yeah, we have your funny comic relief Bumblebee, your grumpy Megatron, your optimistic Prime, and this is also where they bring Scarlett back into the picture. Alita has been demoted. She's loading up some train, and they drag her into the shenanigans.
Yeah, she is trying to stop them because they're stowing away on a train they think is full of toxic waste. And so they have to chase her to stop her from alerting people. And by the time their skerfuffle reaches a stop, they're already on the surface of the planet. Most of Cybertron, I guess, is below the surface. They're living in underground cities, but these trains take the toxic waste to the surface, and now they're too far away, and they're seeing the surface of the planet for the first time, and, they're stunned by its beauty, and I go, yeah, this movie looks pretty good. I can't say I'm stunned by the beauty of the planet, but it looks pretty good.
Agreed. Yeah, it's a good-looking movie, but it won't compare with a Pixar picture.
No, but a Pixar picture isn't going to have this much action. In the first half hour, we have a chase where Pax is chased by the guards. Then we have the race. Now we have this train battle sequence where the train is going almost completely vertically. I can smell the new roller coaster that's going to go in at Universal Studios next, where you just go completely vertical like this train does. There is just a lot of action that can help gloss over the fact that we're still getting data dumps. Like when they find this map, it starts talking about the Quintessons, which I did have to look up. I'm like, okay, I remember the Quintesson judge from Transformers 1986's movie.
Yes, dare to be stupid.
No, those were the Junkatrons. The Quintesson was the judge who fed them to the Sharkatrons.
Whatever.
The Quintessons had 5 heads. But I did look that up, but we do find out that it was a Quintesson attack that left this beacon that they're going to follow. And, it seems like a pretty easy journey. They get on the surface. Alita, who was their boss underground, is going to take the map, call them GoBots, I guess that's an insult in the Transformers universe to be called a GoBot.
It was on the playground back in the 80s, so it might as well be now.
And they make it pretty easily to where the beacon goes. There's only one moment of suspense when a Quintesson ship is over the planet and it's scanning for life forms. I don't even know if Transformers would show up as life forms as they're not organic, but it's scanning for something and they have to hide under a ledge to not be caught.
There's some excitement here, right? There's some good tension where Orion is keeping not Bumblebee from tripping into the sensors that they're sending down. That was a pretty good tense moment for what we're doing here, but it is starting to hit a pace where it's almost hard to keep up, and I'm glad that they are continually reminding us what they're looking for, because otherwise it's too much action and it's too many MacGuffin names that I'm not able to keep straight in my head, but we're also still getting introduced to new characters.
Yeah, they reach some cave of teeth, and this is where it all comes out, right? This is where the twist, the curtain is pulled back, and the wizard is just a dude. You know, Sentinel is a betrayer. All sci-fi movies like to have this kind of twist. And if you're a certain age, you will probably be surprised by this. That age being single digit.
Yeah, we get Lawrence Fishburne's character, Alpha Trion, here. He is among the primes, but isn't a prime. And while all the primes are dead, they're able to resurrect Trion. He's merely disabled. And so they get him back online. And wouldn't you know it, he was recording everything. He has a hologram that shows the battle of the primes against the final battle against the Quintessons. And Sentinel Prime betrayed the primes and literally stabs them in the back. You see a sword impale one of the robots as Sentinel Prime cuts them down, and we find out he's not really a prime. He's just taken the name. He got the matrix of leadership out of one of the primes. It just disappeared because he was not worthy. The planet and the spirits of the primes took it away from him.
But this is also where we learn about the concept of cogs, the Transformer cogs. The reason why the characters we've been following aren't Transformers is because they don't have cogs in their chest that make them a little bit bigger and give them the ability to change into vehicle mode.
But they were born with them. They were taken at birth, which just begs lots of questions, right? Sentinel's just running around the nursery, pulling out like cogs every day.
I figured it was like a bris.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah, so again, you get the point of this, that yes, we were born innately as Transformers, and you've taken away our ability to be who we are and left us underground to mine for energy resources that should be easily flowing. It's a class warfare, and Sentinel definitely represents 1% greed and lies, and D16 is ready to kill, and OP is more nonchalant about that.
He's not nonchalant. He wants to bring down Sentinel, but he doesn't want to do it with a bullet. He wants to do it through the power of the media, I guess. He just wants to make sure everyone knows so there can be a big revolt.
Right, because what we've been seeing is that OP has this spirit in him, and essentially what Sentinel has done is taken away everybody's free will. You know, without these cogs, they're not able to be who they are, but OP is so special at heart that even without a cog, he is breaking through that. That's why we're to see that he's a born leader, right? Even without his cog in the matrix of leadership, he's one better than the rest of us.
So, yes, Alpha Trion takes cogs from the dead primes and gives them to these four. And I'm like, I don't know what B127 did to deserve this. He just was standing around. He doesn't seem super heroic, but now he is going to get a cog, as is Elita and the other two. But meanwhile, they're going to then oversee the big reveal, which all of us had figured out by this point. The Quintessons come, Sentinel Prime kneels before the Quintesson leader. They look more like green aliens than any kind of robots, these Quintessons. And, you know, the writers and director of this film said that they have ideas for a trilogy. I would have to think Quintessons would have to be more well fleshed out in a later film. Here, we just find out they're the real rulers of the planet, and Prime literally kneels before them, and all of this energon they're mining is being taken by the Quintessons. It's not being used by the people.
They look pretty similar to the 86 movie. I mean, there was some kind of cyber squid thing in that original movie.
Go back and rewatch it if you dare, but they look very, very different.
I mean, they're not as organic. I mean, here they look more tentacly, you know, anime. I don't know. I recognize them as something I had seen before, so that's an accomplishment.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely insectoid, crustacean type of organic life forms, but definitely evil.
You see, I always just go back to the judge, though. The reason they were quintessons, quint meaning 5, is they had 5 faces. You had 5 different personalities going on in one body, and it, like, spun like a top. And so that these things seem to have one face, and that, you know, there seem to be a bunch of worker quintessons, and then a leader quintesson comes out, the emperor quintesson that everyone kneels to. I mean, once they take care of Sentinel Prime at the end of this movie, the Transformers still have a huge quintesson problem they're going to have to deal with.
But that's not the story of this movie. The story of this movie is, how do these two friends fall out? And this is kind of where it starts happening. They're supposed to transform now that they got cogs, and they end up falling down a hill and running into future Decepticons.
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of downplaying the big action scene that was there where they are running and partially transforming. They don't know how to transform. They were spotted by Arachnid and have to run from these guards. I'm surprised that these guards aren't more well-defined. It feels like they copy and pasted a 3D model because they all look identical as compared to, there's so many hundreds of Transformers they could have picked to fill out these rosters and given fans some more joy by seeing them. But yeah, we're going to have to hold that joy until we get to the high guard of Transformers, who I guess worked for the Primes, and after the Primes were killed, they went into hiding, and they say they do secret missions against Sentinel Prime, but they don't seem to really be too effective. How could you be if your head is Starscream, right? If you're led by Starscream, how effective can you be?
Steve Buscemi. I haven't heard from him in a while.
Oh, he's doing DirecTV commercials.
And a lot of Adam Sandler movies.
Oh.
I haven't seen Steve Buscemi, I think, since Hubie Halloween, but that wasn't all that long ago. And yes, sadly, I've now admitted to watching Hubie Halloween. But I didn't know he was in this. And so when they're being seen by this shadowed robot, I'm like, they were taken to Steve Buscemi? And sure enough, it was Steve Buscemi. But he's well cast as the slimy Starscream, I think. I think he's a good pick for that voice.
Yeah, and just a minute ago, you were talking about how the grunt soldiers are all kind of copy and paste, and up to that point, I would agree with you. Like, yeah, let's fill out this roster a little bit. It's like, oh, wait, nope, here is the rest of the Transformers. You've got Shockwave, Soundwave, Starscream, and some other ones that I'm not quite sure of their names, but if you're at all familiar with the original cartoons, you're seeing faces and shapes that you will recognize here in this honor guard.
Oh yeah, I saw my toy box from when I was a kid is what I saw here. And I'm like, I really want to know what Soundwave transforms into because it's not a Walkman.
But he definitely has a cassette deck chest, so I don't know what he's supposed to be.
And this is where we start to see D16 become an evil ruler because he's not going to bow to this high guard. He's going to go off and Starscream's going to try to stop him. And these two are going to have a fight. And D16 still doesn't really know what he transforms into, but he gets that iconic cannon on his arm. All versions of Megatron I know have had a cannon on their arm. And he puts that right up in Starscream's face. And now that's all it takes is he's now the leader of the High Guard because Starscream is a coward.
It is kind of a scratch the record transformation, don't you think? Like, a better script would definitely have shown more steps along the way from falling into this kind of militant, aggression.
I agree. That's why when I was talking earlier about the alternate histories of Optimus Prime and Megatron, I liked it when Megatron started as a gladiator who then met up with Optimus Prime, who was a data clerk, and they had very different philosophies. Again, if we go back to X-Men First Class, you have Charles Xavier, who is educated in the highest schools, the most prestigious universities, but then you have Magneto, who was forged in a concentration camp and has spent his life thirsting for revenge and murder. One of the first Fassbender scenes is him in South America killing those on-the-run Nazis. And so you have people who start with a difference of philosophy coming together, but their difference in philosophy is too great and they can't overcome that. Here, we have two robots, D16 and Orion Pax, who seem to have similar philosophies at the start, but now D16 is like, I will never trust a Prime. I will kill Sentinel Prime. And Orion Pax is kind of like, where's this all coming from?
Yeah, agreed. And I'm like that too. I'm like, who put the screw up your ass?
It does just kind of feel like a problem of modern movies where the people now writing movies bring in the same baggage and knowledge of previous movies that we all bring in. So their shorthand is here is like, yeah, it's Magneto, it's Anakin. They're turning bad. You don't really need to delve into why. Bring that stuff with you and tell yourself a story.
But the good origin stories do it well, and it make you really feel like, oh, I'm rediscovering a franchise I thought I knew. And here, look, I don't even like this franchise, so I have no love at going back and seeing this origin. But I just want to say, if I forgave it all of its previous sins and said, tell me a good story, this movie ain't doing it.
I think you're being a little bit hard on it because I feel like the story is serviceable. The character motivations are shaky, but there's a lot going on that I feel is almost too much for this movie. I feel like they needed to shave it down a little bit more, but they wanted to put everything in here. When you walk away from this movie, you could turn on the very first episode of G1 Transformers. I don't think you could go straight from this into the Michael Bay film. Maybe, but I think you could go into the G1 Transformers easily enough and watch that. I feel like there's just too much origin going on, but the story is so basic, I can't really ding it except that it's not inventive.
Well, that is a ding. Yeah, it's so basic, it's not a compliment. They got blueprints, they're not filling it in. Like, it's one thing to say this is what we want to do with the characters. It's another thing to actually have you laugh, enjoy. I hear you guys are liking this movie better than I am, but yeah, I'm not feeling like this has got spark. It's not got pizzazz.
The Allspark?
Yeah, it doesn't have any of that.
Yeah, my problem is so much that happens in this movie happens by happenstance. It started with the Bumblebee having the message tag, and then it happens that they just accidentally come upon the High Guard, and then it just so happens that Arachnid is going to lead an attack against the High Guard because they followed the 4 robots to that location. There's just a lot of things happening that don't feel well motivated. There needs to be more character motivation and more reason instead of just now's the point where we want to separate Pax and D16, and so we're going to bring these characters in to do that. It feels very functional writing, not very inspired writing.
Yeah, it's diagrammed, what I call it. It's like, yes, I see what you wanted to do, but you didn't actually shape it so that it's fun to do it.
And in this attack, our 4 main bots are separated. D16 and Bumblebee, whatever his number is, get captured and taken to Sentinel Prime, whereas Orion Pax and Alita are just left behind because I guess Arachnid is not very good at her job.
They can only carry so many, they say. But okay, if we want some more character motivation, this is really where Megatron turns, right? This scene here is him facing off against Sentinel, and Sentinel kind of torturing him and, goading him while he has him with his hands tied behind his back. Is it great motivation? No, but they're trying here at least, right? They're trying to put something on the screen that will show us why Megatron is about to turn.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it does feel like an effort. It is an effort to watch. I agree. I'm straining. They're straining. We're all straining to get through this. Yeah, he's a fan of Megatronius, and it really hurts D that Sentinel has taken Metatronius's core, his spirit. He's basically taken his hero's inner workings and passing it off as his own inner workings. And this is where we have that Decepticon symbol branded into his chest.
Yeah, it doesn't really have any impact because they're robots. If you were branding human skin, that would be a dark, dark scene. But because they're robots, it's like, okay, so this is where he gets his symbol.
Well, he's not going to be OEM anymore, man. He's going to have to be aftermarket parts if he wants to get rid of that.
Meanwhile, Alita does her only functional thing in this movie, I think, of giving some very weird pep talk in which she proclaims she's better than Orion Pax, but he is their leader because he has hope.
Yep, you saved Jazz. Your instincts tell you to make brave and courageous decisions for a reason. She doesn't have that instinct, but I do like her speech. I'm better than you in every way. I mean, I understand in all the meta reasons why they want Elita in here. Scarlett Johansson's one of the world's biggest stars. You also want some gender parity. You want to have a female character on both sides, your Tila and your Evil Lyn, your Elita and your Arachnid. But if you're going to have her here, give her something to do. Elita does nothing. Bumblebee does nothing, but he's comic relief.
Yeah.
Elita doesn't want to be here. She was dragged along. She then has no functional purpose in this film. I really feel that this could have been done by the AI version of ScarJo from Her. You didn't actually need ScarJo herself.
At the risk of begging a hornet's nest, I'm guessing most Transformers fans are male. There's not a huge contingent of women that love it, and so they just haven't developed female characters for them.
I mean, the toys are in the boys' toys aisle back when they had such a thing, so...
Yeah, it feels, very much gendered in that way. And if this is supposed to be their fix, it didn't fix. Sorry, Scarlett, but you mean nothing in this movie.
No.
She provides some great moral support.
I'm better than you, but you have to be the leader because you're the white guy. I mean, it's a strange speech.
And this is where he will start to step into leadership and tell the High Guard, transform and roll out, bring in the catchphrase.
Also clumsy, right?
Yeah, especially since I don't think either Soundwave or Shockwave can roll. Maybe they become tanks in this universe. I guess Shockwave isn't a gun either if Megatron's not a gun.
Even their symbolism is kind of clunky because, we were all born with cogs. I'm like, cogs as a symbol are like being part of a factory or a machine. It's the opposite of feeling like you're individualistic and meaningful. It feels like you're anonymous. To be a cog is to have no identity. So I just think it's really a bizarre speech where he's like, we all had cogs and they took it away from us.
Yeah, motivator chip or something would have been a better name.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think they're leaning heavily on Transformers lore with a lot of this stuff, and it does become a bit too much. It does feel like a toy. It's like, oh, you have your Transformer, but did you buy the cog? Oh, you have the cog, but did you buy the Matrix of Leadership? You have to keep getting these upgrades for your toy. But we're going to see this kind of in parallel. D will refuse to kneel before Sentinel Prime as Orion decides to take on a leadership role. And then, instead of attacking initially, he has this other plan that involves getting the miners and capturing Arachnid because they lost their recording. What Alpha Trion had given them was destroyed in the attack. So they no longer had their holographic proof that Sentinel Prime was evil. But Arachnid records everything with all of her eyes, and so they can use her to broadcast it to the entire city that Sentinel Prime is evil. And so the movie's convoluted. Orion Pax's plan is a little convoluted as to what they're exactly trying to do here. But it will end with the train car crashing into the tower where Sentinel has D16.
And this is where we get the big turn. This is where the falling out happens. You said they were supposed to be a trilogy. They should have waited. They should have believed in their project enough to say, we can wait a movie or two before D and OP fall out. It feels really weird the way it happens here.
I think we said the same thing about X-Men First Class when Charles Xavier got paralyzed. We were like, it feels like they really put a lot into this movie that we thought they might save for a sequel. But yeah, here, D16 with his arm gun is ready to shoot Sentinel, and Pax jumps into the way of the bullet, getting his arm blasted off and a huge hole in his chest. I think he's dead. But D16 grabs him as he's falling off a cliff and is like, why did you do that? Why did you jump in the way? And then for no apparent reason I can understand at all.
I was really hoping someone could tell me.
Then, just right then, D16's eyes turn evil like a Sith. They turn red, and he goes, I'm done saving you. Well, A, you didn't save him much.
You never did.
Well, at the very beginning, he did, right?
I mean, he threw him in a garbage can to hide him from security bots. If that's saving him, wow. With friends like these.
Yes, I'm done saving you, and he drops him into the planet's core. And I wish that there was more build-up for that big character arc. I wish that it was less, we have to hit these beats, and more character-driven. The story needs to be character-driven.
Totally. This is the thrust of the movie. It didn't matter about Sentinel and the Cuisinarts or whatever the hell. It mattered about these two.
But in exact parallel, intercut between each other, we're going to see what I think may be Stuart's favorite moment from the Michael Bay movies, when there's the spirits of the dead primes that will bring Orion Pax back to life. Remember when Sam Witwicky went and saw all the ghosts?
Oh, yeah. Transformer Heaven. Yeah. Beautiful.
I couldn't believe they did that again. I couldn't believe they did the spirits of the primes again after Transformers 2.
It plays a little bit better as a cartoon. I'll say that much. I can accept it a little bit more than a human going to transform. I don't know. Yeah, that Rise of the Fallen is beyond.
I was getting some big time 70s Shazam vibes from this, like when he would go into that hall and all the previous Shazam gods would talk to Billy Batson. That's what I was getting here.
Oh, wow. That's a memory I don't even have, and I watched that show back in the day.
But this is where he becomes Optimistic Prime, right? This is where he truly becomes the semi or whatever.
Not a semi yet, but at least Optimus Prime in name, because he gets the leadership chip.
He's basically a Cybertronian version of a semi-truck. I mean, he looks like he has a cab and he's got a little bit of a trailer to him, but he's not exactly an Earth truck. But yes, he gets the matrix of leadership and is named Optimus Prime, whereas up on the top of the tower, D-16 kills Sentinel, and then taking his name from Megatronus Prime, he's like, I am Megatron. So both are christened at the exact same moment.
Yeah, parallel. I'm getting a lot of Revenge of the Sith vibes here. You know, this is kind of like the birth of the twins and the birth of Darth Vader at the same time. Death of Padme. It's reading like 2005 to me here, which, you know, isn't a terrible time to go back to.
And then it just kind of ends. OP, he's a lover, he's not a fighter. He's like, you guys are kicked out. I'm not going to kill you. I don't do that.
Yeah.
We do have a fight, and it feels as perfunctory as any of the fights at the end of the G1 cartoon used to be, because they always ended in fisticuffs between Megatron and Optimus Prime, and it always ended with Megatron slinking off to plot his next plot and Optimus Prime standing there heroically. We need this fight, and they give it to us, but it feels so weightless. It feels so insignificant.
Yeah, again, like I said, it almost feels like it didn't happen. It's just like, get out of here. We're Autobots. Fist bump.
Optimus Prime knows he needs a good commander to help him lead, and so that will be Elita. And he also needs a court jester.
Yeah.
Is that why he keeps B-127 around?
I think so. I definitely think so. Who runs down for a mid-credit sequence to tell his junk bots and ends up decapitating two of them.
I did love Bumblebee with the, I have knife hands, I have a battle helmet. I loved his pure joy as he was transforming and getting his weaponry and things. That was a lot of fun for me. Bumblebee is easily my favorite character of this movie.
Yeah, there's fun to be had in this meandering tale.
And then if you stayed through the very long credits, there was a very end credits scene on the tail where everybody is getting a tattoo. All the Decepticons are getting their emblem put on, and they get the name. Megatron says, "We are Decepticons," and they fire their guns in the air waiting for the rematch.
Truly just crass branding at this point, right? Like, oh, we didn't get the logo or the name in there. We better, end credit scene.
Yeah, it feels more obligatory than it does feel setting up any of future stories that they may or may not have in mind for this trilogy.
Right.
Again, if you wanted to really do a Marvel-like stinger, have the Quintesson ship in view, or have Megatron working with a Quintesson or something like that, you know, to really set up some kind of fear of a threat to come. Because, I mean, Megatron's a loser. He's lost in every single story he's ever been in, so he doesn't feel like a huge threat here at the end. So Justin, Stuart, we've discussed the pluses and minuses, but is Transformers 1 more than meets the eye? Justin.
I think that's a good metric, right? Pluses and minuses. And walking out of the theater, what was my vibe? Were there more pluses? Were there more minuses? Did I feel annoyed? Was I feeling a little bit of joy? Maybe I was just in the right mood. I walked out of this movie thinking I had a good time. And to be honest with you, I know it's not saying a whole hell of a lot, but it's probably my favorite Transformers movie, because the other ones were such a slog. And all the live action ones where we get humans and stuff, my memory of those are a lot of metal things twisting around on screen, kicking up dust, and I couldn't tell what was going on. Here, everything was bright and well defined, and even in the overly action-packed scenes, I could still determine what was going on in front of me. So from that standpoint, hey, it's a win. And also, this just feels like what 8-year-old, 9-year-old me sitting in the living room on Saturday morning playing with Transformers, watching, if we gotta admit it, kind of crappy cartoon that we had at the time, on steroids now, right? Like, this is beautiful animation. We've got good acting. I think we have some legitimately good jokes in here. Sure, the story's simple and very bad character development. But yeah, overall, I'm going to recommend this movie, even if you are a G1 Transformers fan. But here's what I'm going to say. If they're trying to do a trilogy out of this, I think they blew their wad already, and I don't want any more stories from here. To me, this whole thing was about showing us where Optimus Prime and Megatron came from. Fine, we've done that. I don't need further stories of where these guys go from here. I don't want it. I don't need it. And at the end of the day, this kind of feels like that compendium of the Clone Wars was to the prequels. The prequels left a lot to be desired. The Clone Wars came in as an animated series and filled in a lot of that stuff. This movie kind of does that too, but the problem is I just don't want more information after this. I feel like you've done it. I've got enough, so I'm going to recommend it, but don't bring me more.
Stuart.
Yeah, Transformers. Has there ever been any gas in this franchise's tank? I mean, it truly has been one of my least favorite. My highest compliments are for the toy. A moderately clever spin on the Rubik's Cube. What a good idea that you could twist a robot into a vehicle. But it has just kept failing up ever since then. From the terrible 80s cartoon and animated movie that my generation has blindly latched onto and perpetuated into 5 terrible Bayformer movies. Yes, it got a little bit better when Bay stepped out of the chair, but I don't really think Bumblebee and Rise of the Beast are particularly good films, and neither is Transformers 1. From an engineering standpoint, yes, this animated movie makes some smart calculations. They have gotten rid of the human drama. I think that was a wise thing to do. They have made a decent looking film. I agree with the aesthetics of this. It was a good idea to dial back all the convoluted lore and just tell us the beginnings. Pick 2 characters, good and bad, and show how we break into Autobot Decepticon. That was a smart idea. But unfortunately, to use some Pixar parlance, this is more Cars than Toy Story. There is no charm in the romance. Unfortunately, D16 and Orion Pax are not characters you will fall in love with. Their pale imitation of Buzz and Woody antics just becomes inscrutable when suddenly they go off-roading into this Cain and Abel tragedy right at the end. Yes, just for reasons the eyes turn red and it's time to be evil. I just thought it was incredibly sloppy. And the Sentinel storyline, it's easy to spot him as a false hero, and he fails to be that necessary wedge that drives 2 great friends apart. So, this works. When origin stories are great. Casino Royale, Batman Begins, they make you fall in love with a series all over again. Warts and all. You love everything about it because you remember the whole history. And here, I'm remembering everything that never worked, and this is not pulling it together. I mean, they are trying to sell something to a new generation that will probably never drive a car and never play with plastic toys. So good luck with that. You have made something completely useless. I think old fans, if you ever liked a Transformers thing, you might like this. It's better than most. But if you think that somebody is going to discover the franchise through this, I'm going to bet no. I'm going to say not recommend.
I think we've done a pretty decent job of picking apart this movie, but I don't know that we've properly sold the fact that I think this is easily the best Transformers film ever made.
Really? You both are saying that?
Yep.
How dare you do that to Bumblebee and Rise of the Beast?
Yeah, the competition for this, the only one that comes even close, I went back and checked all my Letterboxd rankings because I did not want to rewatch all of those movies.
You don't want to ever watch it again. I agree.
But the only one that even came close to my ranking for this movie is Bumblebee. And again, I know there are people who love Transformers 86.
Oh, God.
take off those rose-colored glasses and look at it without the nostalgia.
Yeah. I don't know. That one with the middle-aged knights was the worst one, but that was a close second.
Yeah, that one was really bad, the last night. And so I've recommended Transformers movies in the past by saying this is the best. This is a recommend, but I wanted to be able to give this a strong recommend when I was going into the theater. I really thought there might be a chance of that this could be good from the pedigree of the writer of Inside Out and the way that did such a great job of handling emotions. I thought it might be able to handle the complex emotions of two friends driven apart into ideological warfare. No, it barely does that. And there are so many data dumps. They try to put in, I did this when I was 12. I remember this. I would get out every toy in my toy box and want to have a massive battle with all the good guys fighting all the bad guys all at once. And that feels like what they're doing here. They had to squeeze in so many characters and so many factions and so many data dumps with the crimes and the Quintesson War and 50 cycles ago, however long that is, 50 millennia, I don't even know. But it ends up being functional storytelling and barely functional character development, but I have a good time watching it. I think the animation's really well done. Like you said, Stuart, I don't think this is going to compete with Spider-Verse or Pixar when it comes to awards for best animated feature, but I think it looks good. I will disagree with you on one thing, Justin. I did find myself confused during a lot of the battles. I was like, who is where? It was reminding me of Bay's movies a little bit in that I couldn't keep up with everything that was happening during the most action-packed of the scenes. But like you, Justin, I think I just had a good enough time, even though I realized this movie could have used a really strong rewrite before they made it. I think one more pass through, one more streamlining where you punch up the character motivations and maybe drop back some of the action in that first half hour, because the first half hour is just so filled with chases, races, and attacks that I think it makes the storytelling feel shoehorned in, and it robs the character development because of the spectacle. So I don't love it, but I still do think it's the best Transformers I've seen on the big screen, so it's a recommend. As for do I want more of this universe, I'll tell you, I would want Transformers 2 highly above all the other Transformers movies that they are talking about making. I mean, there's the G.I. Joe Transformers crossover film Hasbro is making.
No, thank you.
That is the next thing, right?
That's the one where we're going to have 4 hosts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we bring in the G.I. Joe trio and the Transformers trio. That Venn diagram is not a circle because we have Jacob on the G.I. Joe series. But yes.
I'm happy to step off if you don't want a fourth wheel.
You're not getting out that easy.
So that's what they're talking about, and I would much rather revisit these people and their world. And, you know, X-Men First Class was the best X-Men film, but Days of Future Past was a really solid follow-up. So I think there's still more that you can tell in an origin story and even improve upon what they've done here.
If the choice is more, they're not Bay movies anymore, but they all feel of the Bay-verse, more of that or more of this, I'll take more of this. Because at least this felt like the creators came in with love for the source material rather than just being crass, like, we got to make more robot stories.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I do feel like this is probably the medium in which Transformers has been told the best. It's not my favorite Transformers movie, but I don't have one. I wish they would never make another one, but they will.
Yes, but what is your most unfavorite? You know what I'm saying? Like, you may not have a favorite Transformers movie, but you're able to rank 86 Stephen King adaptations.
Yeah. Rise of the Beast, Bumblebee, this, the first Transformers, and then God only knows.
Well, we'll put these toys back in the box for a while. Next week, we're going to a different franchise property. We're going back to DC Comics for something I've never heard of, but there was a mini-series on Max called DMZ. Not the rapper. I think that's DMX. I think DMZ stands for Demilitarized Zone.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're leading up to Joker 2, and so we're playing catch up with DC Comics. I don't know this one, but Rosario Dawson, Benjamin Bratt. It's something about a second Civil War, which feels kind of timely, actually. And in the meantime, join us this Friday. We're getting to the second, maybe the best, Body Snatchers movie. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, 1978 for Gold Level. It's the one with Donald Sutherland and the infamous Scream.
Yes, that is available this Friday for our Gold Level donors of $25 or more on Patreon, on Podbean, or directly to us. You can find the details at nowplayingpodcast.com/donate. The first review in this Gold Level series, the 1956 Invasion of the Body Snatchers, came out last Friday. That's available to listen to today if you donate. Then this Friday, the 1978 classic. Which one is better? There is that argument. Is the remake better than the original? There's very few cases of that, but we found that out when we did the Thing retrospective series. We liked Carpenter's better than we liked The Thing from Another World. So will we feel that way about Body Snatchers? Join us and support our podcast and hear all those bonus reviews. And thank you for your support of our show. Justin, Stuart, thank you for joining me, and we'll be back then till all are one.
Our races united by a history long forgotten and a future we shall face together. I am Optimus Prime, and I send this message so that our pasts will always be remembered. For in those memories, we live on.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Now Playing's Transformers Movie Retrospective Series.
Tell Grimlock about Petro Rabbits again.
And in the NowPlayingPodcast.com archives, you can find reviews of other films such as Terminator, X-Men, Star Trek, Predator, and many more, as well as individual movie reviews such as Avatar, Inception, Howard the Duck, and Scott Pilgrim vs. the World.
Your friends will love it. Sure is. It's a lot of fun.
You can also follow Now Playing on Facebook and Twitter, where we post announcements of new episodes and where the hosts post movie mini reviews. Links to our social media pages are at NowPlayingPodcast.com.
We are here. We are waiting.
Support from listeners like you help keep Now Playing operating.
I owe you my life. We are in your debt.
You can find the link to donate using PayPal at the bottom of our website, NowPlayingPodcast.com.
Just ask yourself, what would Jesus do?
Now Playing is edited by Santiago and Arnie.
Like us, there's more to them than meets the eye.
Now Playing is not affiliated with Hasbro Incorporated, Paramount Pictures, DreamWorks Pictures, or 20th Century Fox.
Not a word until we get a lawyer.
Transformers and all that the Transformers universe contains is the property of Hasbro Incorporated, and no infringement is intended.
Okay, so what? I downloaded a couple of thousand songs off the internet. Who has it?
The opinions expressed on Now Playing are those of the individual hosts and may not reflect the opinion of Venganza Media Incorporated.
There's something a little fishy about you, your son, your little Taco Bell dog, and this whole operation you got going on here.
Now Playing is a Venganza Media production, copyright 2024, and no part of this show may be reproduced, repurposed, or redistributed without the written permission of Venganza Media Incorporated. All rights reserved.
Come on, showtime's over. We've got work to do.
Totally. This is the thrust of the movie. It didn't matter about Sentinel and the Cuisinarts or whatever the hell. It mattered about these two.
I haven't thought of a Cuisinart in a long time.
I know.
I don't even know if they still make those.
I found one the other day. I was digging around in the kitchen cabinets. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, that one was really bad the last night. Was that the one with Anthony Hopkins so embarrassingly?
Yes, him flipping. Oh my God, yes. Flipping and explosions. The worst thing ever.
Anthony Hopkins recently did an autograph signing. I want to know if he signed a single Transformers piece. I want to know if somebody paid hundreds of dollars for a Transformers piece signed by him.
I thought Anthony Hopkins passed away.
No.
No? All right.
I know Trump keeps saying the late, great Hannibal Lecter, but Anthony Hopkins is still with us.
Oh, God, is that why it seeped into my subconscious?